Who inspires you? I know you often talk about your father and your teacher, Brinda. Beyond those people, and this also goes to one of your comments in your lectures or to the students, is about a guru can be anyone. A guru can be not just the person who is teaching you the craft, and inspiration can come from anyone. So if you were
or
to
anything
pick,
actually,
sure,
right?
absolutely. And if you were to pick inspirational mentorship, or hey, that person made me think this way, or this certain thing made me think this way, beyond these well-known names that you often talk about.
No, see, honestly speaking, the numbers are too huge, because many times even an anonymous quote can inspire you a lot. Now, for example, somebody actually said, I forget who, I don't even know,
Okay,
because the
that's
person
fine.
was not cited. That person actually came up with a fantastic statement that I have often reused. Do not practice till you get something right. Practice it till you cannot get it wrong.
That's an interesting way.
Yeah, see, only a great person can think like that. Because an ordinary person will practice it till he or she gets it right, and then go on to the next one. Whereas a great artist only will be able to think that getting it right is only the first part of it. There is a long way to go after that. So those kind of statements can be just completely anonymous, but they blow your mind away. And in terms of an approach and attitude, that's what separates the grain from the chaff and so forth. So a lot of people have inspired me. If it is outside the music, it can be people like, say, Don Bradman. Who was like, he showed that if you can be actually human but still as close to God as you can get, because he was like literally twice as good as all other people who have touched.
This is interesting. Like I said, I mentioned P.A. Krishnan earlier, right? He is an adoring fan of Don Bradman.
Yeah. So you cannot be anywhere. That just sort of gives you a sort of goal, that if you want to be the best, don't be just marginally better than all other people around you. You have to be like at least twice as good as the others. You have to aim to be.
That's fantastic. Because there's a wonderful book on artistry by Howard Gardner. He's an educational psychologist from Harvard. It's interesting. He puts Igor Stravinsky on one chapter and Gandhi on the other chapter.
Fantastic.
So there is Stravinsky, and then there's Gandhi.
Right.
So, like to your point, right? As a musician, you could absolutely find inspiration in Don Bradman's batting, and then connect the dots between that, or draw an arc from Bradman to what you want to do in music, or what you would aspire to be, what you want to be.
Yes, because many of these people are across the board, because if you take even, say, Bharatiya or many of these people, some of Kannadasan's profound statements also, if you want to take it. So many of them, when they come up with something brilliant, they do inspire.
Okay.
How much you follow the rest of the thing and get inspired consistently is another point.
Sure.
But in terms of getting flashes of inspiration, all of them have an impact.
You glean something from the lives.
You definitely glean.
And at the end of it, it is all creative process.
Yes.
And whether it's a cricketer, whether it is an artist, you glean something from them.
You do that. And I don't know if you've already probably done this because you're so well read. I wrote a blog called The Dot Connect Theory.
No, I should look it up.
Yes.
I should look it up. That's excellent.
Yeah. Because this is my theory that given the same set of data points, how everyone evolves is based on how they connect the dots.
I have used that phrase recently in one of my discussions with my manager. And yes, and this is also why I say when I read about civil rights struggle, it's not isolated. It teaches me something about the freedom struggle of our own.
Right.
When I read American history, it teaches me something about the Indian history.
Right.
And vice versa also.
Right.
And moving on to your Thirukural. I know one of your students performed, and it was fantastic. And I also watched the recent on stage, I don't know how recent it was, where Gopal Gandhi's translation of Thirukural and with A.R. Venkatachalapati on the stage, and then you came on, and then your student or whoever performed, right? Ilayaraja's attempt at Thiruvasakam. Right. Ilayaraja took Thiruvasakam. One of the biggest complaints and controversies that have always dogged him is where he scores the music and fits lyric into the music, which is where he always ran into controversies with the lyric writers, and that's a different controversy. And he does the same with Thiruvasakam. Particularly, he's there, I think, in the sixth track, where he talks about he strikes a certain note in his mind. He's searching for a suitable Thiruvasakam that can fit there, and then he tries one, and then he sees the words break. Because you allude to this, the integrity of the words, because that is the beauty of the poetry, right? So you allude to this. How am I going to fit these words? Because otherwise, a Tamil scholar will come out and mock it, and your phenomenal exercise will be more controversial than need to be, and it'll become a different talking point at that thing, right? So I always found that. So it's, and there's this other lesser known attempt by others, probably you know it, Schubert's setting of Winterre's poems to music.
Okay, I didn't know.
This is a whole set of poems. Schubert took it and set it to music. So he is setting a song to music.
Right.
And this is what I always love about the Western world. Schubert did it. There is a wonderful book that explains what he did.
Right.
What is each poem about? It's a lushly produced book.
Fantastic.
So today, if I want to understand what Schubert did with Winterre's, I go there.
Right.
So the one thing is, I'll say it's amazing that because you couldn't pick and choose Kural. You are not playing pick and choose.
No.
You did all 1330.
Yes.
So it's not like you're fitting something into your music.
No.
You are giving music to the entire corpus of work.
Right.
And on that, a few questions. Why did you pick Kural of all the literature that was in Tamil? And how did you go about it?
Well, see, it's more the Kural picked me actually. I think this Gopal Gandhi's project, when he asked me to set some to music, I had very little exposure to Kural and only a distant admiration for it. Of course, seeing it in buses and all this.
Of course.
And of course, it was very cited, one of the most cited people in the world.
Did you have Tamil as your, I don't know what medium of instruction you had
I actually
in school?
studied in Kendriya Vidyalaya.
Okay, so you had probably Hindi.
We had Hindi and English only. But my learning of languages was at home. Because I was taught Kannada, Tamil, Telugu, Hindi and Sanskrit at home.
Okay.
Even before I went to school. I went to school only from my 4th standard. But
yes, I think you did say that in one of your...
From being homeschooled, I had a passion for all these languages. But so Kural picked me. So when I was tuning, he wanted me to tune some 34 Kurals for his particular
the event.
Yeah, so I did it, and at that time I did it more like, freestyle music for many parts. Because I really did not think that the Kural would lend itself to structured rhythm.
Okay.
Meter-based kind of alas. But when I did it experimentally, I tried one just to see for myself if something fitted. And then when I did it, then I thought, okay, then why not we sort of do this for all the 30. Yeah. So that thought came to me only on January 9th of 2015 or 16 or whatever. And on 12th, I went and started doing it, basically.
I think it's a record, right?
Yeah, it was a record. Because I really thought, okay, I should... once I'm inspired, I thought, okay, I can do this in about 100 hours. Is what I first thought. And then I experimented with 1 or 2. Then I thought maybe I can even do it in 50 hours. So, And then I wanted to do it in public so that, It was all, I can't sit in home and then claim I did this. So I wanted it in public, so we did it in a space. Tamil Nadu government actually provided the venue for that. So I ended up doing it in 16 hours. But it just happened in a blur because, see, there is, maybe it's all the accumulated experience and the knowledge that came at that inspired moment. So the way it was almost like reading a novel. So I opened this page, I scan it once like one thing, then this tala, this raga will just suggest result, then I'll just sing it, that's it. I just recorded the whole thing. The whole thing is recorded actually.
Yes.
So it just happened like that. And some of the talas are very complex because they are not even intuitive talas that you will think of when you're tuning something. So those kind of talas also suggested themselves. And some of them are bunch of ragas together like Raga Malika. So
have you thought about writing a book about it?
See,
because otherwise, how would anyone know what goes on behind this? Because you do make this point also elsewhere, right? In one of your, again, I'm going back to your lecture on teaching. You tell people, don't just learn the lyric. Learn why Tyagaraja put a certain word there or a certain reference there. And this bedevils this kind of stuff, because unlike, we know why Wordsworth wrote One Solitary Reaper. We know why Beethoven picked Schiller's Ode to Joy, so on and so forth. But when it comes to Tyagaraja or the Trinity, much of it is in layers of mysticism. Probably practitioners know some more. But even the practitioners know legends. How far they are historical, we don't know. So let's say 30 years from now. Oh yeah, Ravikiran made this attempt. Yes, it was 16 hours. But beyond that, what would help them appreciate what you did?
See, I have spoken about it in interviews. A lot of media covered it at that time. I have spoken about it briefly, but for me to even write it as a book, I don't know, because much of it happened so intuitively that today I cannot say why I chose Samsadhani for this particular Kural or something. The way the structure of it, if I saw it, I have to scan 10 adhikarams. I mean 10 Kurals in one adhikaram, right? So in that, I would probably look at each of these lines and see probably which is the line that is most challenging within that. Because the structure of the Kural is 4 in first line and 3 words in the second line. So that is not an even meter to fit in any one particular tala and 2 cycles of tala. So how you do this and how you do it at the same time keeping the first line as the first part and second line as second part. So that is very, very challenging actually. And that is where a lot of musicians who have tried to do Thirukural tuning before have not succeeded.
Yes, because Thirukural is meant for singing, right? And it lends itself to music, and therefore what he attempted there, and even with that he kind of struggled, if that is so.
It's not
only
easy.
thing is, nobody you will say that he struggled with it, but he did struggle.
I'll tell you, anyone will. I'll tell you why. Because it's easier
and it's not a bad thing to say that he struggled. I mean, the literature is rich, it's difficult, so to struggle with a piece is not discredit to the musician.
It's not. It's just the challenge, it's just the nature of the beast. Because for me, it's easier to compose a full new song with lyrics and melody and rhythm myself than to tune what somebody else has composed.
Absolutely.
So there is a lot of challenge involved in that. And so to overcome that, somehow I think it was what I would say, just that inspiration.
Grace. That takes to the next recent composition, Fur Release. Why Beethoven? Why Fur Release is easier to answer because it's I think is it a sonata, which is just one instrument. So it's easier to lend it to another instrument. I mean, you are not transcribing it on Chitravina. You took an inspiration out of it. You are offering a tribute to the master, so to speak. So it's not like, I'm taking that music and I'm playing it on this instrument. No, you didn't do that. So what about Beethoven made you do that? Or was it just the choice of the music?
Choice of the music, number one. And second thing, see, I had been requested to play by a bunch of people also. There was a concert in UK that I played with BBC, with artists of the BBC Philharmonic, where it was first suggested that maybe I should play this piece. And then there I did not end up playing it. Later on I played with some other artist. And then the tune was haunting me. Then I thought, why not do a full solo of it? So it was not anything specific to Beethoven, because I'm a great admirer of some of the other composers too, and I may end up doing something for the others if I'm inspired to. So it just happened to be Beethoven at this time.
Okay.
So nothing more to it than that.
Okay. And like you say in your lecture, you tell your students, have peripheral knowledge, like go beyond just the lyric, go beyond this. So when you were doing Fleur-de-Lis, did you reach beyond and okay, who's Beethoven, or
well, those
probably
kind of
you know some of the history of Beethoven, certainly,
yes,
right?
yes. Definitely the thing that there's a lot of debate about whom it was intended for. Those kind of things I read up. I sort of equipped myself with that knowledge. But at the same time, I wanted to approach just music unconditionally, because I didn't want to over-condition my mind also.
Okay, I see what you mean. Okay.
So I looked at it like that, and then I was looking more at the melody of it, and then I thought, okay, it sort of suggested itself to codify into a kind of recognizable raga, so it gave me a different twist. So I created this raga Vito Vanam, which is...
I have a question on that.
Yeah. You can ask me. Sure.
So, because you say that you... the word that came to my mind was you christened it, right? So you christened it Vito, or so to be the most acceptable Sanskritized spelling. Like I said, right, there are a few regrets in my life where I don't know Hindi that well, though I did study what to say in a private manner. I'm not very conversant with Hindi, which means I cannot appreciate a ghazal very well. Right. So languages are a barrier sometimes. And I'm not a proponent of this, the anathema towards what they call the 6 letters that are the Sanskritized letters in Tamil, right? Which they want to avoid, the pure Tamil movement. I see it as linguistic chauvinism.
Right.
If Bharadiyar can write Hindustanam, it's good enough for me.
Right.
That's my, another friend was asking, like, should it be Ramanuja or Ramanujan? I said, it's Ramanujan.
Right.
There is no argument about it. So it's not about being anathematic towards a language, but at the same time, why the insistence? You're Tamil, you are, though of course you know the politics about calling a certain people not Tamils, that again is Nazi. So why the insistence on that it should be a Sanskritized word?
Nothing. There was no insistence or anything at all. It was just a completely unself-conscious thought. So because I was just looking at words which are close to this in Indian language, and in Tamil there is nothing that comes as close to a thing which has a proper meaning to that. But I've composed a lot of songs in Tamil. A lot of my operas are in Tamil. So many of my natural thought process is in Tamil. So Sanskrit is at least a little more foreign to me that way.
I'll take that explanation, absolutely. A performer was saying, my interpretation of what I want to perform, my repertoire, my interpretation that I bring will be influenced by the kind of accompanists that I have. Some of them will have, and this is whether it is Carnatic music, whether it is movies, like K. Balachandran always loved to have Kamal Hassan. Martin Scorsese pairs up with DiCaprio. You can go like that. People form a team. This is all a teamwork, right? So yes, you gel with a certain set of people. Do your accompanists influence what you do on stage?
To the extent that, if you are aware of their style and their natural propensities, then you can adapt yourself subtly to make the concert work better. So a good accompanist is one who plays for a lot of different kinds of main artists, and so the accompanist is also aware of the main artist style. So that when the person accompanies, it is actually literally taught as a part of your training as accompanist, that you should not merely be aware of the music, but you should be aware of the main artist. So you should actually adapt yourself to each main artist. So it has been my thinking that if the main artist also can adapt to various accompanists, the concert will be even better.
Okay.
Otherwise, it'll just be a bunch of soloists who just happen to be on the stage at a given time in a highly improvised.
You can't. I mean, that is where I find okay, this leads to another question. Right?
But I'll just add one more sentence to what I said. This is a subtle adaptation. Beyond that, I cannot change my style too much. I'll still be.
Of course, because you are the lead. Right? Carnatic music, which is called classical, often talks about Western classical music. Carnatic musicians also talk more about Western classical music. While they all accept that jazz is more sister music to them than Western classical music. Right? Jazz, because of its structure, because of how it is done, the improvisational nature of the music, and everything that happens on a jazz stage is so easily happening on a Carnatic music stage. In fact, I sent it to my friend, so Ted's book on jazz, Appreciation Jazz. I could take 3 pages there and I can remove the word jazz and put Carnatic music there.
Right.
He could very easily have been talking about Carnatic music. So why does this happen? Why is Carnatic musicians always about talking more about Western classical music, though they are not that they are anathematic, not that they are opposed to jazz or anything. They all accept that jazz is closer to them, but they talk more about Western classical music.
Well, see, in fact, I have always, from 1980s, my example, whenever I talk about introducing my concerts to Western audiences, I have always said that Carnatic is more like a combination of the elements of Western classical when it comes to compositions and the elements of jazz when it comes to improvisation. So it's like a 50-50 balance of compositions and improvisation. So it's not true to say that Carnatic is closer to jazz or to Western classical.
Because Carnatic music is closer to jazz than Western classical, probably.
No, it's not. Because when it comes to the rigor of compositions, the structure of compositions.
Okay, I see what you mean.
So you are supposed to be that, to have the same approach that you need to have as a Western classical musician to present the composition in a proper way, doing justice to the intellectual property of the composer and to the spirit of the composition, and the tightness of presentation. So good artists will really work a lot on the compositional aspect of it, which is closer to the Western classical approach.
I hear you.
And then around that, this is the only system in the world that takes the best of the Western classical and the best of Western jazz and other, for the compositional rigor plus the improvisatory freedom. So this is the only system, because if you look at Hindustani music, again, that is closer to jazz, because the composition is a very small part of their playing actually. It's only 5 to 10%. The rest of it is improvisation. If you take classical Western, then again it's entirely composition, no improvisation. So Carnatic is probably the only major system in the world which has a 50-50 balance between these two important aspects of music. And so that is really closer to the truth.
Going to your books that you have produced, right? And again, this came from one of your lectures where you're talking about Janda Varisai being changed in the textbooks, and you talk about 1 beat, 2 beat, and what is the original one and what has kind of changed over the years. And you were also talking about how to introduce it one after another to a child so that the sequence of understanding is there for a child. I know you're producing textbooks for school children.
A little bit, yeah.
And I find that your teaching, particularly, it reminded me, for me, just as you have a high regard for your father, anyone who knows me knows that in 10 minutes, I'll start talking about my father. The way you go about introducing concepts, the non-contradictions, do you see some, and this is where I think a good alliance with an academic environment will probably be of aid to you in producing textbooks. And one of the ironical things that came about when I recently posted about your textbook is immediately one guy comes and says, and this, I'm sorry to say, only Indians can ask this. Why do we need another textbook? Oh, on the book irke. That one is a standard textbook. Why do we need another one? I said, do you know how many translations are there for Homer?
Right.
Just last year, one more came out.
Right.
Nobody here will ask why one more translation, why one more textbook. The question rather may be, why should I buy yours?
Right.
What difference does it have compared to the others? That's a fair question. Or if somebody had asked me, Arvind, why do you think I should buy this? Or what does Ravikiran provided that somebody else didn't provide in the earlier textbook?
Right.
That's a fair question. But our people go right to, why do I need another textbook?
Right.
So, your answer?
No, basically, see, my textbooks were a product of my, respect for everything that has been produced before. And at the same time, there have been certain gaps in
Your
the knowledge
Okay.
base in some of those. And certain things have been expressed in a sort of what I would call as a wrong way, which can be misleading for millions of people. And my textbooks are also a product of my interaction with some of the greatest legends in the field. I was very lucky. From the age of 2, if one thing about my prodigious thing that I really find most humbling is that I got the perspectives of some of the greatest people in the field. And so whatever I've done is I try to codify all that knowledge and try to put it in a way which also brings a performing perspective into the thing. So that's why I call my textbooks not as just learning Carnatic music, but as perfecting Carnatic music.
Got it.
And the concept of perfection has to be instilled from the first note that a child sings. Unless you sort of bring that word in, unless you introduce that word right from day one, the child is not going to be going much far. So I bring those kind of things, and for a lot of, as you would have already seen in that CMCM series, common mistakes in Carnatic music, a lot of very obvious mistakes are being made in the field even today with respect to some of the most elementary ragas also. So those kind of things can easily be avoided, especially when we have got so much of intellect happening, information age and cyber age and all this. So my idea is to make sure that ultimately a field's health is not determined by those at the top or those at the bottom. It's really determined by those in the middle. So for example, if you take Western classical today, the middle level players are of a very, very high standard. I wouldn't say the same for Carnatic, for instance.
Okay.
The people at the top are fantastic.
I mean, they are the creme de la creme.
Yeah. So the top is going to be fantastic in any field almost.
Sure.
So, but the middle level has to be strengthened, and that's what's the backbone of any field.
I felt that on a different score, though, right? The top is the top, and the bottom, of course, will be inconsequential.
Yes.
It's the middle that institutionalizes it and enforces it.
Yes, so it enforces it. Of course, the bottom has to be, uplifted as much as possible.
Sure.
So the idea behind my books is to make sure that this codified knowledge that I've picked up from all these geniuses and great masters is sort of transmitted. Yeah.
And now shifting gears a little bit, right? We all talk about art and the place of politics in art. And going back to Beethoven, of course, Beethoven was very political. The Ninth Symphony is considered the most political symphony.
Okay.
It is being played by rebels. It was played in Tiananmen Square. The Chinese rebels, so the rebel students played Ninth Symphony. And now they are playing it for the Rohingyas. There's an event organized for Rohingyas.
Okay.
And they're playing Ninth Symphony. And then when the Berlin Wall fell, Bernstein was called to perform the Ninth Symphony. He changed the word actually, because the choral symphony has Ode to Joy. Bernstein changed it as Ode to Freedom.
Okay.
Of course, this being Western classical, nobody complained.
Right.
It is still a celebrated performance. There was no sacrilege, taboo, how dare he do it. First of all, what Beethoven did was sacrilege, because he puts choral voices in a symphony.
Right.
There is no other symphony that does it. So, politics and so here, right, Western music, jazz is absolutely political.
Okay.
You cannot write the history of civil rights without jazz. and the
I think
jazz,
even blues was
blues,
right?
all of them. The Afro-American music is hugely political, and the practitioners were political. They are politically active. And Nina Simone was absolutely political in her outlook, and her composition and the songs that she plays for the sake of black students. One of it's called "Gifted and Black."
Okay.
And then there is a composition about Goddamn Mississippi.
Yeah.
And then about Martin Luther King dying. So they're very political.
There is another song, My Only Sin
Yes.
is the color of my skin.
She's a very political person, a turbulent life, a great artist.
Yeah.
But when we come to Carnatic music, now you know where I'm going, right? So
please.
the devotional aspect, there is nothing wrong with it, right? Yes, Bach composes Mass in B minor, and then he has the sacred pieces. There is place for devotion. There is place for all that. But should it be just that and anything else is not just frowned upon? It's like, how dare you?
Well, actually, if you were to look at it, many composers have been for socialization of art. Even if not outright politicization. Except those like Bharatiya, for instance, who may probably, not qualify as a mainstream Carnatic composer, but a lot of his pieces have inspired Carnatic performances. So, today he's part of the mainstream thing, so you can include him in that. But, right from...
I have a few comments on that though, but I'll come to that later.
Okay. But right from Purandaradasa and others, Tyagaraja, occasionally even Uthagad Venkatakavi, and all that, if you see, they have definitely been social critiques. They have spoken out against society. They have spoken out against social practices. Now, for example, Tyagaraja was vociferous in his objection to this sacrifices and all this, killing beasts and all these kind of things, and those kind of sacrifices, all these things he has spoken out against. He has spoken out against ritualistic practices. A lot of those things. Purandaradasa talks about society where falsehood and lies are the order of the day. A lot of things. People have always been not hesitant or defensive or been preoccupied with political correctness when they compose. There have been composers who were very, very, very true to what they felt, and so their works stand as testimony to the kinds of times that people generally had at even 500 years back or whatever time it was composed in. So that part of it is very much there. Maybe we don't talk about it because even the musicians... No, the musicians themselves do not know the meaning of many of the songs that they sing. That's one of the main reasons. They don't understand the meaning and the context of what they are singing. So they look at word Sri Rama coming, then they just do the Sri Rama kind of thing. But what he's telling that Sri Rama there is completely lost in the meaning. Now there is, there are plenty of examples I can give about this. But that said, politicization is another term. I mean, that's like, probably the next step to socialization. So now, where we go with that, whether we are going to be dealing with specific politics of parties.
No, I'm not talking about that at all.
If you are only talking about it as socialization, addressing social issues, addressing social concerns, talking about those kind of things, then I'm all for it. And in fact,
for example, Beethoven's Third Symphony, right, Eroica, supposedly he dedicated it to Napoleon. So he's composing it. The dedication says Napoleon. And then he gets to hear that Napoleon declares himself to be emperor. According to legend, he scratches out the name and then they say, "See, this guy has become another dictator." And then the symphony is considered a rebuke to the dictatorial tendencies of Napoleon. So this is not about an individual or anything. This is about an idea, and also we are not talking about politics as in certain parties, the individuals. We are not talking at that level, but about
the principles. If it is about social principles, then I'm all for it. And I think art has already been very much doing that in its own way. Whereas, then probably the term politicization is not the correct one.
Probably, yeah.
So, I'm all for because politics itself means something else.
It can mean many things, but
yeah. So what it is coming to mean is disturbing to me. But if it means healthy social critiques, social commentaries, social changes through music and art, I am all for it, because I personally think that music is a strong vehicle to send across messages that are inspiring to the society as a whole.
Unfortunately for the Tamil world, right, or broadly the Indian world, it's either classical music or film music. There's nothing in between for us. So and classical music has become kind of ivory tower. And the film music has become more proletarian and lumpen, whatnot, right? So we don't have the space where there is music for causes, politics, and issues.
No, see, even recently I played a concert for social harmony. I
Yes.
keep playing these kind of things. I keep using music. See, I look at music as in two dimensions. One is music as an end in itself, where you just seek whatever perfection, resolution, jnanam, whatever you want through music, because Carnatic is ideally a brilliant launching pad for that. And the other way that I have looked at it, and in fact I've written about this in my teens, music as a means. Music as a means for other things, social changes, social commentaries, or even social causes. All these kind of things, again, I've very much taken a very active interest in those kind of things.
Okay.
And it's music which really gave me the platform to even start to doing these rural education programs, or do so many of the things was because of the music. So because I thought through music I could initiate a lot of changes. So even in 1990s and all that, I started doing that because of music. So the socialization of art is something that I personally believe in. And if you want to call it politicization, if politicization includes that approach, then I'm okay with it.
Okay.
But if
You don't want it to
politicization
be
includes
degenerated
supporting this
to-
party,
No.
starting against that
That is
party,
not at all.
giving veiled messages
No,
direct messages about parties, those kind of things.
When I talk about politics and art, I'm talking about the goddamn Mississippi kind.
Yeah, those kind of things is okay. So if you want to fight for equality, fight for those kind of things are absolutely fine with art, and art has that space to do that, because at the end of the day it is one's creative expression. If one really does it with integrity and from an internal compulsion, rather than with an agenda that is political.
That is always the case, right? What you do it for, right? If you're doing it in service of a real goal with an integrity versus, I know this will rile up someone, I'm going to get some pages on the press.
Right.
That's a whole different attitude. And then there is the unnecessary needling of something, right?
Yeah, those kind of things are completely different ball games.